Have you ever felt a pain in your body that no medicine could explain? What if your suffering isn't just physical, but the echo of something far deeper? And what if karma doesn't live in the heavens, but in your posture, your breath, your bones? Long ago, a Zen master gently whispered to his disciple, "Your karma is not hidden in the stars, nor locked away in some dusty scroll. It is etched in your breath, engraved in your bones, shaped in the way you carry yourself. Your body is the ink. Karma is the script." The mind, always convinced of its authority, repeats thoughts like sacred chants. It takes shelter in logic, hides behind layers of ego, and constantly spins stories to explain the world. But the body, it tells no lies. It holds no illusions. It becomes a sacred altar where invisible truths are quietly written without a single word. In the teachings of Zen and throughout the flowing stream of Buddhist wisdom, karma isn't just the memory of our past actions. It is vibration. It is energy. It is the subtle, lingering intention that continues to echo within us long after the moment has passed. When that vibration remains unresolved, it doesn't simply disappear. It rises, it returns, it makes its presence known, not always through loud suffering, but sometimes in whispers, a sense of tightness, a recurring ache, a strange fatigue with no cause. These are not punishments from the universe. They are messages, gentle calls to awaken, because the body is not just a vessel. It is a compass of the soul. What it endures, it reveals. What it longs for, it reflects. And what it finally releases, it transforms. This is the story of one such seeker. A man who, without warning, awoke one morning with a dull ache in his lower back. It wasn't severe enough to cry out, but it wasn't soft enough to ignore. It sat with him quietly, like something ancient that had finally chosen to speak. He tried everything he knew, corrected his posture, practiced conscious breathing, applied herbs, and even fasted. But the discomfort kept returning. It was stubborn, uninvited, and deeply persistent. In his stillness, he finally asked the question that truly mattered. What is this trying to tell me? The body did not answer in words, but in sensations. Whenever he meditated, the ache grew stronger. Whenever he tried to distract himself, it faded a little, but it never truly left. Only when he sat completely still, when he surrendered his need to control and simply allowed the pain to be, something shifted. The ache didn't disappear, but it began to weep, not with tears, but with a quiet sense of release, like a wound exhaling its sorrow. In that moment, a Zen teaching returned to him like an echo from the past. To listen to the body is to listen to the past. Karma wears a body. In the words of the Buddha, karma is not merely a law of cause and effect. It is the momentum of intention. Every thought, every spoken word, every action, these are seeds. And when they are forgotten, neglected, or buried in the unconscious, they bloom in mysterious, often painful ways. The lower back, according to ancient teachings, is the spiritual shelf where we carry our burdens. Guilt we never voiced, resentments we tucked away, responsibilities we accepted, even when they were never truly ours to bear. These don't just linger in the mind, they lodge in the muscles, they whisper in the bones. And so, the seeker began to ask himself hard questions. Whose weight have I carried for too long? What guilt still lingers in the shadows of my being? What truths have I silenced to avoid discomfort? Each question stirred emotion, and with each wave of sensation, the body spoke truths the mind had long forgotten. What began as an ache in the lower back soon revealed itself to be only the beginning. Karma wasn't done speaking. It had simply chosen a new place to whisper from: the hands that held anger. One morning, while rinsing his hands in the cold waters of a mountain stream, he noticed something strange. A subtle stiffness had crept into his fingers. They could move, but only reluctantly, as if each joint resisted him, like a memory refusing to be forgotten. The chill wasn't from the weather. It came from within, a coldness born of suppressed emotion. In the teachings of Buddhism, the hands are more than tools of labor. They are expressions of action, of will, of karmic doing. When the hands begin to ache, it is often not from fatigue, but from what they've been unwilling to release. From what they've grasped too tightly: anger, control, the need to punish, the urge to possess. He began to remember how often he had clenched his fists when confronted with uncomfortable truths, how his palms would sweat during moments of envy or insecurity. His hands, he realized, were not tired from work, but heavy with reaction. They carried the echo of emotional storms long past, but never fully processed. A teaching from an old Zen scroll echoed in his mind: let go or be dragged. So he began a new practice. Each morning he sat in silence, visualizing light flowing into his hands. With every exhale, he would release something: a name, a moment, a wound. Slowly, the tension in his hands softened. His knuckles loosened. And as his hands began to open, something unexpected happened. His heart softened too. The throat that refused to speak. Weeks later, a different discomfort arose, this time in his throat. It wasn't sore. There was no fever, no sign of illness. And yet, it felt constricted, tight, as if something was trapped inside. He hadn't spoken for days, not out of choice, but because he simply couldn't. Yet within him lived 1,000 truths, unspoken thoughts, long withheld forgiveness, things he wished he had said but never did. In Buddhist understanding, the throat is the center of expression. When it becomes blocked, it's often not from silence alone, but from truth withheld. And karma, quiet yet persistent, clings to every unspoken truth that should have been voiced. One evening, he sat by a small fire, feeling the tightness like a knot in his breath. He looked out into the night and softly whispered to the wind, "I forgive you." Then again, with trembling breath, "Forgive me." A gust of wind moved through the trees. He coughed, not from sickness, but as if something deep inside had finally begun to leave. Not from the lungs, but from the soul, the eyes that forgot to see. As the days passed, another shift occurred. His vision, once sharp, began to blur. Not in the way that needed glasses, but in a deeper, subtler sense. The world became a blur, not because it changed, but because his focus had. He wasn't seeing what mattered. His days had become filled with noise. His thoughts were fog. In Buddhist insight, the eyes are symbolic of clarity and truth. When we refuse to face reality, when we cling to illusion, our inner vision begins to distort. Sometimes metaphorically, sometimes literally. He realized he had spent so much time looking outward, searching the horizon for answers, that he had ignored the mirror, the one within. So he turned inward, sat longer in meditation, breathed deeper, and slowly his vision began to clear. Not through potions or lenses, but through presence, through truth. He began to see, not just with his eyes, but with awareness, the feet that refused to walk forward. One afternoon, while climbing a gentle slope, his feet gave out beneath him. The pain wasn't sharp, but it burned. Not the kind that comes from injury, but the kind that comes from resistance. His legs weren't tired, they were hesitant. In Zen philosophy, the feet are symbolic of life's movement. When karma anchors us to the past, even the lightest step toward the future can feel unbearably heavy. He sat down, breathless, and began to remember all the moments he had hesitated, all the times he'd postponed decisions out of fear, all the crossroads where he had stood still, afraid to move. Each act of indecision had left an imprint, accumulating like stones in his shoes. The pain wasn't a punishment, it was a message, a reminder that the past was still gripping his present. He didn't bow to the pain itself, he bowed to the message it carried. And when he stood again, he walked, not quickly, not with certainty, but with surrender. One small conscious step at a time, healing through awareness. And so, gradually, the pain began to fade, not because of pills, not because of force, but because of understanding. As his body continued to reveal its messages, one discomfort after another, the seeker began to understand. Each sensation was not a punishment, but a quiet invitation. Karma wasn't shouting, it was whispering. Each symptom was not an enemy, but a sacred signal. The pain was not an intruder, it was a reflection. The body mirrored exactly what the soul was yearning to release. Every ache, every stiffness, every strange shift in breath or movement, it all carried meaning. The Buddha once taught, just as a snake sheds its skin, we must shed our past again and again. But this shedding does not come through force or willpower. It arrives through presence, through deep embodied awareness. So with every discomfort, the seeker began to ask himself a simple but powerful question. What am I still holding? Then he would breathe, sit in silence, and truly listen. In that space of quiet listening, something would soften. Karma didn't disappear. It didn't vanish like a shadow in the sun. But it changed. It began to dissolve, not by denial, but by being seen. Not by resistance, but through understanding. Not by escape, but through forgiveness. The body, he realized, is the Dharma book. In the Zen tradition, everything can be your teacher. A bird's cry, a bowl of tea, a moment of stillness. But nothing teaches more honestly than pain, and no teacher is more constant than the body. The body is not a cage, it is a parchment. And upon it, the soul's story is written in tension, in illness, in sensation. Every unexplained ache, every recurring condition, it is not random. It is a passage from that sacred scroll within. Karma, then, is not something abstract. It is not some distant law reserved for future lives. Number. It is here, now, in the way you breathe, in the way you carry your shoulders, in the way your body responds when truth is near. To begin healing, one must begin reading, not books, but the body. To listen to pain is to read the chapter karma wants you to see. And to release the pain is not to defeat karma, but to fulfill its teaching. A Zen master once whispered, liberation is not the absence of suffering. It is the awakening that happens through it. The body, in its silence, holds hidden messages, written in flesh and bone. Think of a trembling leaf. It doesn't move on its own. It is moved by the wind. In the same way, the body is moved not only by physical force, but by invisible winds, emotions, memories, buried intentions, unresolved karma. The body becomes the field upon which seeds from countless lifetimes bloom. Some seeds grow into peace, others into pain. One who follows the Zen path does not resent the body. They honor it. They see it for what it truly is, a mirror that does not lie, a mirror that cannot be deceived, a mirror that quietly reveals what the mind has tried to forget. Let us now reflect more deeply. What do specific physical symptoms mean when viewed through the lens of karma and spiritual growth? 1. Chronic pain, the echo of unlearned lessons. When pain persists with no clear medical cause, Buddhism invites us to look inward. These sensations are often the residue of karmic patterns, samskaras, mental and emotional imprints that haven't yet been met with awareness. When pain returns again and again in the same part of the body, it may not just be biology. It may be an unresolved grudge, a grief unspoken, a guilt quietly carried for years. These unresolved inner knots manifest as stubborn physical discomforts. And Zen does not encourage you to run away from them. Instead, it says, bow to the pain. Ask it, what are you here to teach me? Then listen, not with your ears, but with your soul. 2. Skin conditions, a mirror of shame and self-rejection. The skin, our largest organ, forms the boundary between our inner world and the outer one. When it begins to itch, peel, or break out, the spiritual signal is often this: you are rejecting some part of yourself. Those who carry shame, especially emotional or spiritual shame, often unknowingly show it through their skin. Rashes, itching, outbreaks. These are not merely surface issues. It is as if the body is desperately trying to shed what the soul refuses to accept. The skin becomes a boundary that rebels, signaling the deep battle within. In Zen, healing such symptoms doesn't begin with ointments or pills. It begins with compassion. Compassion not just as a concept, but as a felt experience toward oneself. The deeper the acceptance of our whole being, flaws, regrets, wounds, the calmer the skin becomes. Because when the war inside begins to quiet down, the surface no longer needs to scream. 3. Stomach disorders, resistance to life itself. When digestion is troubled, the cause is rarely just physical. The belly, in Buddhist understanding, is the seat of willpower and life force. So when digestion falters, when bloating, pain, or nausea arise frequently, it often means life itself is being resisted. Unprocessed experiences, fear of the future, unresolved regret, bitterness toward the past, they all congest the spiritual energy of the gut. It becomes too much to digest. The healing is not only found in changing what is eaten, but in changing how one lives. Slowing down, practicing gratitude, surrendering the need to control every outcome. These are the practices that rekindle the fire of digestion, not just for food, but for karma, for memory, for the fullness of human experience. 4. Breathing difficulties, trapped grief, unlived truths. The breath is sacred. It is the bridge between the body and the spirit. When it becomes shallow, tight, or labored, the cause often isn't physical. It is emotional. Uncried tears weigh down the chest. Words left unsaid tighten the lungs. Every unspoken truth, every buried sorrow. These don't simply disappear. They collect in the breath, making each inhale feel like a burden. But when we return to the breath in meditation, not as a mechanical function, but as a spiritual act, it becomes a prayer. A soft inhale becomes a welcoming. A full exhale becomes a surrender. Buddhism teaches, breathe in awareness, breathe out release. And when this is done with devotion, breath becomes more powerful than any mantra, more cleansing than any ritual. It clears karma, quietly, deeply, completely. 5. Weight imbalance, protection, fear, and inner punishment. Whether it manifests as excess weight or extreme thinness, imbalanced body weight often speaks to something much deeper than diet. Obesity can be the armor, a subconscious wall built to protect from emotional invasion, heartbreak, or shame. Emaciation, on the other hand, can arise from deep self-rejection, the soul turning against the body. Karma moves subtly. It can lead someone to carry burdens they were never meant to hold, expectations, pain, guilt from others. True healing does not come from shaming the body. It comes from befriending it, from sitting with stillness and asking gently, "Dear body, what are you holding for me?" And when that answer finally comes, not from the mind, but from the heart, something begins to shift. The weight begins to release, not because of restriction, but because the soul no longer needs protection. The burden dissolves. 6. Headaches and pressure in the skull, the weight of thought. Recurring headaches are not always caused by nerves or physical tension. In many cases, they are created by mental friction, the constant spinning of the mind, trapped in overthinking, judgment, comparison, anxiety. In Buddhist insight, this is known as the spinning wheel, a state where thought chases thought endlessly, with no breath in between. The cure? Stillness. Not forced silence, but surrender. Dropping into the now like a single raindrop falling into a still pond. Only when we release the old stories, the inherited fears, the societal programming, we create space in the head. A lightness arrives, a clearing, and it is a peace no medicine can offer. 7. Fatigue, the weight of spiritual misalignment. When tiredness becomes a constant companion, one that no amount of rest, food, or vitamins seems to heal, it is time to look deeper. This kind of fatigue doesn't come from poor sleep alone. It comes from walking a path that no longer aligns with your soul's purpose. It is the kind of tiredness that drags not only the body, but the heart. The spirit begins to dim, not because it is broken, but because it is being ignored. When exhaustion becomes a pattern, we must pause and ask, am I living with intention? Am I walking the path I was meant to follow in this life? Because when one begins to live in alignment with their dharma, their sacred spiritual duty, energy begins to rise naturally. Vitality flows without force. It becomes spontaneous, joyful, light. That is why fatigue is often karma's first alarm bell, a soft warning that something within you is out of step with truth, the karma of ignoring what you feel. But what happens when we don't listen? When we brush it aside, numb it, distract ourselves with noise? Karma, ever patient, simply turns up the volume. What begins as a whisper of discomfort becomes a cry. What starts as tension becomes illness. What begins as an ache becomes collapse. Zen teaches that to avoid is to delay. To ignore the body is not just forgetfulness, it is a subtle form of spiritual laziness. But even this is met with compassion. Because karma is not cruel, it is consistent. The Dharma does not rush. Karma does not forget. You may run, you may resist, but eventually all must return to the temple of the body and kneel in humility, not to be punished, but to receive the teaching. True healing is not the same as curing. Healing does not always mean symptoms disappear. Sometimes they remain, but the suffering they once carried dissolves. Other times, when the lesson is fully understood, the body returns to radiant balance on its own. To release karma from the body, one must walk the path of mindful awareness. This path is simple, yet sacred. 1. Listen to pain without judgment. Pain is not betrayal, it is guidance. 2. Honor the story behind the symptom. Every physical imbalance has a spiritual root. Seek it, see it. 3. Let go of blame, especially self-blame. Karma is not punishment, it is opportunity. 4. Forgive the past. Without forgiveness, the body will keep reminding you through pain. 5. Practice daily awareness. The more conscious you become, the less karma needs to teach through suffering. The sacred dialogue between body and soul. Your body is not a burden. It is a bell, ringing softly or loudly, depending on how much you listen. Every sensation, whether joy or discomfort, is karma playing its melody. Those who listen live wisely, and those who follow the deeper call behind the sensation, they live freely. Zen whispers a gentle truth. When you see illness as a teacher, not an enemy, you have entered the temple of truth. Because your spiritual destiny does not live in some distant future, not in the stars, not in ancient texts, but here, in the pulse of your body, in your breath, in this very moment. To honor that pulse is to walk the path of liberation. To listen to your body is to bow to your karma. And when karma is understood, when it is no longer resisted, it begins to heal not just your body, but your soul. Thank you for watching this journey of healing and awakening through the wisdom of the body. If this touched something within you, please support our channel, Buddhism Seeds, by subscribing, clicking the like button, sharing this video, and leaving a thoughtful comment below. Your presence helps us grow a global community rooted in mindfulness and compassion. We'll see you in the next video. Until then, breathe deeply, walk gently, and honor the truth your body is trying to tell you.